can make this just a bit bigger for you. Let's just see.
It's okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
What kind of difference do I want to make? What are my values and why? What is my concern? Why am I concerned? Now, this is the key one. What can I do about it? What will I do about it? And this one, how do I evaluate the educational influences of my actions? And that's what I hope you will go away with from this session. That this is one of the most difficult questions to answer. What evidence do you have that you've had an educational influence in the learning of your students? Now, if you'll just think about that, and this is one of the most difficult ones to answer and put into an explanation of what it is you are doing, that you've had some educational influence, not just about learning, because you must be aware that students and ourselves, we can learn many things which are not educational. Our students can learn to cut off from what we're trying to teach. They can actually learn to do quite some antisocial activities, and they learn them very effectively. Now, this isn't educational. That's why I distinguish between what is educational learning and just what is learning. Now, this is where, Joan, there you have the action, what we call the action reflection planner. And if you just continue down the page, you'll get Joan's answers to these, which she is now holding herself to account for with these 16 Ed D students. So in January, she will come having carried out some of this work, evaluating her influence with the evidence, and offering it to the group for what we call validation. In other words, the criticism of a group like yourselves to see how to strengthen the inquiry. Now, can I just check this? Because that question, Tom, was really important about how. And we do it by starting with the concerns that the teacher actually has. We go through this action reflection process and encourage them to develop their own action planning. And this is where Joan now needs to work on this, which is this one. How do I demonstrate the validity of my account of my educational influence in learning? That's what she left the group with last Sunday, which was to say, when we get together in January, I will be coming with my account to see if you believe that it is valid in terms of my influence. So, could I just check, because this is so important to get it going. Do you want to come back on that, Tom? Yes?
It's because what I think is very crucial, because I agree very much with Popper that the problem you have both in democracy and in knowledge production is that you have this, what they call Robinson Crusoe syndrome. You get isolated on an island with yourself and your practice. And what you need then to have this intersubjectivity you're talking about, you need to create a public sphere for this debate, for criticism, or friendly criticism with each other. But there is something about education that is so sensitive to people. Sensitive about my practice, sensitive about my values, sensibility about do I affect the children like the principal ones, like the parents ones. That I sometimes find it hard to create this intersubjectivity in dialogue that really improves. So how do you get the quality of this conversation or this criticism? And where do you create the public sphere for this intersubjectivity between teachers? Because often they are like Robinson Crusoe, they isolate themselves with the pupils and try to.
Okay, now, because I meet with the teachers, literally I hold, every Tuesday and Thursday evening, people know that I'm in a particular room at the University of Bath. And they can come along, these are master's students and quite a few doctoral students, and we will actually answer those kinds of questions. Okay? Now, one of the things I'd just like to show you is how we take one of the most difficult things to do and work with what we call empathetic validity. Now, I don't think that may be a term you've heard, and certainly I don't think you would have used what we start with, which is empathetic resonance. Okay, now, when you heard the guitar, I would imagine that the music was resonating with you physically. You were giving a response to this, which was literally, when I say from the gut, it is actually from the body, that you have a response which is holistic, but to that music. Now, I just want to show you one or two video clips where you can answer Tom's question, by you being the validation group. Now, this is rather big for a validation group. I usually have between 5 and 8 people. And we will just explore the validity of the claims that we're making. Now, I'll just show you just one that I'm hoping you will be able to see.
Maybe if we turn down the lights.
Yeah, I think it would be important to have the lights turned down if we could. Okay? Well, let's just see if we can turn the lights down to get this. Now, you might. What I'll do with the cursor, I'll just turn the cursor. Now, this is what we use for empathetic validity. Now, you don't need to hear the sound for this. The next one, you will need the sound. But this was in a classroom in China. And as I say, I just want you, as I say, it's very dark at the moment, but I think it will become lighter. 80 students in this classroom in China. I thought the lesson had finished. I turned my video camera off, and then I saw the teacher, Moira Laidlaw, go to the door. And I turned the camera on again, and it was only a minute, but this is what I saw happen. Now, what the cursor allows you to do is just stop at particular moments and just pick out something that resonates with you. Now, this particular student had done something very courageous for a Chinese student, and she had resisted something that Moira wanted her to do. Okay, now that is very unusual in China. And at the end of the lesson, Moira is congratulating this student and actually showing that resistance. And it's not a negative thing. Now, as the student looks here, it's the gaze that I want you to focus on. And also, how Moira is just looking at the students as they go past. Now, just look how she is engaging with. Now, I'll show you one where the visual is clearer. But Moira, when I said to look, Moira, I'd like you to look at this 1 minute, because I'm finding it very significant. Moira looked at it and said, well, what do you mean, Jack? This is what I do. Yeah? What do you mean it's significant? After about 3 viewings, Moira was beginning to see that yes, that the expression of what I was calling a loving energy, and if you like, a loving warmth of humanity, was actually being communicated from her body with her students. Now, until this point, Moira had just taken for granted, she'd never made it public, that when she explains what she's doing, she can actually draw attention to a loving warmth of humanity that pervades her educational relationships. Now, I'll show you something in a moment where one of my doctoral students, who was advising our government on the uses of drama in mental health, developed in her thesis what she called a passion for compassion. And again, to answer Tom's point, I'll try and suggest to you that if you'll use these multimedia accounts, you'll use the video in this way on yourselves, and this is really important, you'll be able to transform the standards in the academy, because you'll bring in your energy and your values as what I call explanatory principles of why you are doing what you are doing. Now, this won't be in the academy at the moment. The universities will not have these standards of judgments in them. They will have eliminated the energy and values of educators from their knowledge base. So this one, as I say, was the first one that just using this particular approach with the cursor, that you can move along and you see suddenly the engagement. Imagine that you are subjected to that gaze yourselves, which seems to me to evoke a pleasure of the teacher Moira to be with you. You know, as she was going past, she was connecting directly with the individuals. And it was not false. It was a genuine pleasure in being in their company. Now, I'll just go for another minute, and then I'll just ask for your responses in terms of this whole issue of validity, because the next one convinced the external examiners of Marian Naidu's thesis, and I'll just see if I can actually get this coming up. Yep. Okay, now, you might not just be able to see this, but the moment that I'd like you to focus on, now you can't see this just at the moment, but I'll just explain that this is the two people, George and Marian. George is the husband. They've been married about 55 years, and Marian has got Alzheimer's disease. George is the carer, and Marian Naidu, there are two Marians in this. Marian Naidu is taking the film, and Marian is the doctoral researcher. And she'd worked with Marian and George over months and months in terms of their trust. It was working with them. It wasn't research on them. And this is, if you like, as George is talking about it, as it's 55 seconds, I'd just like you to watch and just pay attention to Marian, because there is a moment that convinced the external examiners of the meaning of a passion for compassion. Okay, so here it is. As I say, it's about 50-odd seconds.
I can only put my own life and feelings as a carer. I care for my wife, as I think that I should, as we've been together for 55 years, and so I've had it no other way. The transition period was very hard, as I had to change my way of life. It's not to my credit to say that I was a very impatient sort of person. If something had to be done, it had to be done yesterday, or else I got very upset. The carers course has helped me tremendously, as some of the people that gave us the benefit of their knowledge and advice allowed me to think about what it meant to myself, and especially my wife. But to caring in general, it means that if it's the man that is the carer, then he has to learn to manage the home, cooking, housekeeping, shopping, etc. If it's the woman that is the carer, then it's the other way. She has to cope with emergencies in the home, such as changing fuses, washes, and a multitude of other jobs that used to be done by a spouse or a partner. The carers course and the follow-up meetings give you a chance to meet people that are in the same position as yourself, when you thought that you were alone and nobody cared.
Okay, now, yeah, the cursor allows you to capture some things which often are less than a second, that you often put there. Now, if you look at Marian, Alzheimer's, so you take that Marian is comatose, would not be communicating. Now, Marian, who's been working with George and Marian for months, just picked on this moment where Marian, and if you just look at Marian's face, yeah, and it's there. Now, you don't need the sound to get that communication. And it is clearly a communication from somebody who is being viewed as comatose with Alzheimer's. And at that moment, Marian, who was, in one way, very emotionally engaged, she was in tears when she saw Marian, the pleasure, the loving energy that Marian was seeing, Marian the researcher, showed this with the external examiners in this way, to communicate her expression of meaning of a passion for compassion. Not in words, but through the embodied response to Marian as she just does this with a husband who is now caring for her after 55 years with Alzheimer's. And there's a beautiful expression on Marian's face as she does it. Now, can we just get the lights? Where are the lights? Are they? Yeah. That's great. Now, you can actually say to me now, in terms of your responses, look, Jack, we'd like to challenge your interpretation. That's not the interpretation that we're giving of this visual data. Now, that is how we work to create what we call empathetic validity. It's a term that Marian Dadz came up with to describe this process. Mine was empathetic resonance. So first of all, there's a physical embodied expression as Marian just gestures, her face lights up from being comatose, and you get that in relation to her husband, just meaning he's being big-headed as he tells you about all the things he's doing for me. Yeah? Now, that feeling that Marian had, look, this is what evokes my compassion, and it motivates me, Marian the researcher, to